Okay, I'll go first.
Wait, no, go. No. Okay, you first. No, wait. Okay, no.
Hi, I'm Brian Menz. I'm an animator. I've been animating for 20 years on feature films.
My turn. I'm Tim. I've been working in animation for about 20 years, and I do a lot of design work.
Animation and culture. Question 1.
All right. All right. Okay, so I watched a lot of animation when I was a kid. I loved animated movies. I loved Looney Tunes cartoons. And I just remember like being curious how it was created. And I remember my mom took me to the library and I'd get books on how it was done. And once I realized that people were creating it, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
My turn?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. I've always loved cartoons from the time I was a kid. Maybe I was 5 years old when I saw my first Warner Brothers cartoon with Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. And from the time I could hold any writing instrument, pencil, crayon, whatever was available, I would try to sketch and draw.
The animation early on started about just movement for movement's sake. And it was like rubber hosey, and it was just very slapstick. But then when they started getting into the mind of the characters, which I don't think was there at the beginning.
They didn't have minds and characters then.
What's that?
They didn't have minds and characters.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
When they started diving into like these characters actually have thoughts and feelings. Mm-hmm. That was one of the reasons, like when I was getting into animation, and I love getting people to laugh, but it's so much more powerful when you get them to cry, because they're just emoting with the character. They're there for the ride.
When animation first came out, and it was really the heyday of film at the time, vaudeville was certainly a big thing during the Depression, and people were hungry for different forms of entertainment. And creatively, obviously, animation's gotten easier to produce. You start out with a Gertie drawing, and then you get into now today we do 3D or stop motion, and the easier it becomes to produce. And now we can do it on YouTube. People can just create their animation at home.
One of the things when we're making projects and we're making movies or shorts, this idea that was always tossed around of universal truth, like we're trying to hit a broad audience, a worldwide audience, and so there's this human condition that everybody can relate to, and it's universal. And I've definitely seen a sway from the universal truth to filmmakers having their own individual truths kind of becoming center stage.
I really feel that the culture is fueling the content. I think before, when animation was coming out, or entertainment in general was coming out, I think the content was just so new. It was a new medium that people were starting to absorb. And now I think as cultures change, we were talking about this before, the studios or entertainment places, they want to make money. So they're looking at what the culture is doing, and they say, okay, if I produce this kind of content for this particular culture, I'm going to draw in more people, therefore more revenue.
And I think it also depends on who's making what, because I used to hear the term, this movie is timeless. This movie's timeless. It's a classic. It exists outside of time. It's going to be as impactful today as it is tomorrow, as it was yesterday. And now the word is timely. Oh, that's very timely. For me, it's the content. The content is, and you hear the saying, the content's king.
Yes.
Nobody knows an animator. We're faceless. It's part of why we're like behind the scenes. We want to perform, but we don't want to be seen. I actually think there's going to be a push. There's going to be a culture shift. With every cultural movement, there's a counter movement. And I think that there is a hunger out there for the content that's not being created.
I agree.
We're in this time of inclusion where we want to include everybody, but we don't want to include the Christian perspective. So we're not being inclusive.
It's pushing Christians in more into the closet. The Bible talks about how light shines brightest in the darkness. And as darker as the entertainment animation industry gets, the brighter that light shines. So Christians who are put the Christian box way in the back of the closet and covered it with mothballs and all that stuff that you only bring out during holidays, that's gonna shine brighter because that light in that closet that you're in, as that room gets darker, people are gonna start seeing that light. What's most important is living your life consistently as a Christian in dark places, so that when it gets darker, people will turn to you like, why is he different? Why is he stable? Why is he not freaking out over all this political issue or the pandemic or fill in the box, whatever you want to put in there. So being a Christian in such a dark industry, I think, is a great opportunity, as hard as it is, to live your life in that environment. What an opportunity, really. I mean, you could run from it. I'm the type of guy, I don't want to be running from something. I always want to be running towards it. And that's because of Jesus' example. He always, he walked to the leper. He walked to the Samaritan woman, things that were counterculture at the time. He met people where they were at. Whereas if he ran from them, now, it always comes to mind that someone told me that, you're in your checkout line and people are bagging their cart, and they're like, if that person doesn't know Christ, what is their eternal destination? You might be that first person to be able to reach someone that way. So there's someone in this dark place in the animation industry who desperately needs to know Christ, and they're looking around for people in the secular world, and they're not filling that hole. And maybe you're that person. But if you weren't there, where's that person going to be? And what a great opportunity to be used by God in such a industry. The content should never influence your walk. I think everything needs to be judged through the lens of Scripture. You need to be solid. As believers, we need to know the Bible. We need to know Scripture better than anybody else. If the content or the world, we'll say, is influencing your walk instead of you influencing them, then you need to take a step back and really see where you're at and see where you're spending your time and resources. People say you have a high level of integrity, they're going to come back to it. They know who you are, versus if you do this one way and do this way another way, people aren't going to know who you are. Is it this person we're talking to at this point, or is this person we're talking to? That consistency of your walk with Christ, when things get really crazy or when things are incredibly beneficial, you're the same person. So when you're working on content like you have and I have that doesn't align with what God has for us, how do we address that? My advice would be not to let the content influence who you are as a person. But we need to let Jesus do that.
I remember when I first got into the industry, I was working at the studio in Texas, and we used to go out to the movies all the time. And it was at that point where God was really starting to, he was starting working. I mean, he's always been working on me, but that's where he was really starting to pull. And we went to this one movie, and The Golden Compass. And I remember, and I'm in there and I'm watching it, and I'm just feeling, it's like Jesus is sitting there right next to me as I'm watching this thing. Felt so close to God, and afterwards.
He wanted to see the film too?
What's that?
He wanted to see the film too?
I don't think he would want to see that film. Well, I don't know. I don't mean to say anything poor about the film.
Yeah.
But I remember leaving the theater and saying to my friends, like, wow, I really felt God in that movie. And they said, well, that's funny because the person who wrote that story and the filmmakers making that story, it was the atheist's version of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yeah. So God was able to take a film that was designed to show the ridiculousness of God and the ridiculousness of the idea of God. And he used it, and he pulled me closer to him with this thing that should have separated me from him.
For me personally, it's, and I'm not trying to toot my horn, I'm trying to tell you I want to be more selfless and promote Christ and allow him to use me the way he wants to use me, and just be willing to say yes. So if God takes me out of animation, he moves me somewhere else, I have to be willing to do that. There's a Christian friend of mine I remember talking to, and he loves to draw. He's drawing. I asked him, if God took away your ability to draw, would you still love him? And he never could answer that question. And at that moment, I'm like, I never want to be at that place. I want to be used by God with whatever he gives me for the time he uses me to glorify him by whatever means. If he wants to give me a trophy, great, that's fine. If he wants to use me in this arena, great. You just have to be willing to say yes and be humble enough to know that what he has for you is what's best for you and will give him the most glory. So that's where I'm at.
So for me, I got into animation really wanting to, it was all about the performance and the characters. And, I wanted to get people to laugh. I wanted people to enjoy their time. And I still want to reach an audience. I still want to get them to laugh and to cry and to be pure, just like good content, just content that I would be, if I imagine Jesus sitting down with me and watching it together, that he's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant.